is Boston Sports. Boston Sports. And it is all we do. 98.5, the Sports Hub. Now, a show that is all baseball.
I know you're so happy about it. I actually think the Red Sox might not suck this year.
This is the Baseball Hour with Tony Maz.
Me!
Presented by Bigelow Tea, Jackson Lumber, Blue Moonlight, Wellesley Testosterone, FindMassMoney.com, Gem Plumbing, and by Golf.
On Boston's home for sports. 98.5, the Sports Hub.
I'm here to give my 100%. I don't put any buts. They're the men in charge. I am here to play wherever they want me to play.
There you go. Make sure you clap. Make sure you clap for Rafael Devers. That happened in San Francisco yesterday. So well done. Well done. That was Rafael Devers' inaugural press conference with the San Francisco Giants. We played a little of that for you early in the show yesterday. I'm sorry, later in the show yesterday. And so I thought maybe the people who listened right at 6 o'clock hadn't heard it yet, just making sure that you understand that Rafael Devers went to the San Francisco Giants and told them he would do everything that he won't do for the Red Sox. So that's the way it began for Devers in San Francisco. The Devers chapter now pretty much over here in Boston. All that remains is what the Red Sox will get out of that trade with the players that they acquired, and also what they will do with the money that they saved from sending Devers to the Giants. 617-779-0985. We want to play a little other sound for you because I told you that earlier in the week, or over the weekend, when the news of the Devers deal broke. And Jimmy, I'm now running this all together. This is running all together in my brain. The trade was, that the news of that leaked on Sunday night, right?
Yeah, around like 5:30 or so.
Okay, so at that point, I started to engage in a text chain like everyone does now. Whenever there's news, all of a sudden people start firing off on the text chain. But the text chain was, how come they didn't get more back? How come this didn't happen? How come that didn't happen? Why are they doing this? And my answer to everybody on the text chain on Sunday night was, this was a money dump. The Red Sox had a chance to dump the contract, and they did. And as soon as you choose that, what you're going to get back is less than what you otherwise could have expected. So again, I'll say this again just so everyone understands it. When you move a player like Rafael Devers, one of two things happens. And when I say a player like Rafael Devers, I mean a guy still in his prime with a lot of money left on his contract. One of two things happens. Either you eat some of the money in that deal and you get a better return, or you eat no money, the other team takes on the whole contract, and you get less in terms of players back.
Can I quote your text, by the way?
Sure.
These players look like stiffs. Salary dump.
Okay.
WTF.
Okay, so and that's how I felt from the very beginning, Jimmy. And I think that that's how many Red Sox fans felt, at least with regard to the return. That they feel like stiffs is a little too strong, but they're certainly not elite free agents. You know, when, for example, when the Washington Nationals traded Juan Soto, they traded him to the Padres, and then the Padres subsequently traded him to the Yankees. Both of those returns felt better than what the Red Sox got for Devers. And you would say instinctively, how does that happen? The Yankees only got Soto for 1 year. The Padres only got him for 1 year. How is it that they were able to get those kinds of returns for a guy that they only kept for one season? And the answer is because they didn't have to pay him and they still have the money to spend somewhere else. Part of what made Juan Soto so attractive was the low salary. That's why there was a market for him, because he could go to multiple places, and teams made the deal knowing that they weren't going to be able to sign Juan Soto necessarily and that he was going to go to free agency, which is exactly what happened. Soto went to free agency and he got a $700 million deal or close to it from the New York Mets. That's how it works. So I was never, ever surprised by that. Many of you were. And if you have any doubts about this being a salary dump, one of the owners of the Giants, Greg Johnson, did an interview where he addressed the money that the Giants took on in that contract. Here's what he said.
If you guys had not been willing to take on the entire thing, do you think you're introducing Rafael Devers today?
No.
So pretty important then. Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, you think about it, we had to give up some players on top of that too. So, I think we felt like it was a better value than what we're paying him.
Okay, so there you go. It's a better value on the players going back than what they're paying Devers. It's exactly the way this deal was going to go. And you know what? The Red Sox knew it. They knew it. They said we had a pretty good understanding of what teams were willing to do. So when they didn't necessarily shop Devers around, but when teams called and asked, and the Red Sox said, okay, and teams said, well, what are you looking for? And the Red Sox said, well, ideally, we'd like to move all the money. And teams said, well, yeah, I don't know if we can do that, but we might be able to meet you somewhere in the middle. Right then and there, those teams were out. And I said this yesterday on Felger and Mass, and I'm not telling you that I told you so, but I told you so. My understanding was the deal started to get real. The conversations and talks started to get real as soon as the Giants said, we'll take the money. Once the Giants committed to taking the contract, then the Red Sox were willing to negotiate on the players. So they had started the negotiation by asking for the Dodgers or the Giants top prospect. The Giants said no. They got into discussions. The Red Sox were unrelenting on the talent. The Dodgers, I keep saying the Dodgers. The Giants said, we will take the contract, lessen the talent, and we have a deal. And then the Red Sox lessened the talent request. Pretty simple. So all this brings me to something that was unavoidable with the San Francisco Giants and listening to them. Jimmy, the Buster Posey, actually, hang on to that. Well, no, the Buster Posey cut where he talks about how they're going to use Devers in the lineup. Can we play that, please?
Yeah, we talked to him a little bit today, and like he said, he goes, I'll play wherever you want me to play. I'll hit wherever you want me to hit. So that's how it started. He's going to DH today. He's going to hit in the 3 spot. We're going to work him in and get him some ground balls at first and make sure he's comfortable before we put him over there. And that's pretty much the way we look at it right now, a little bit of DH and a little bit of first.
So this is the part of the story now that interests me. The chief baseball officer of the Giants is Buster Posey. He replaced a guy named Farhan Zaidi. Okay, now many of you may know that already. For those of you who don't, Zaidi is your classic current modern GM. He was a baseball analyst, I believe, with the Oakland A's. He is a Moneyball and analytics guy. The Giants hired him. Overall, it is, it was starting to run its course. The Giants haven't been able to get an elite hitter into San Francisco in some time, so you get the idea. They fired Zaidi at the end of last season. They replaced him with a former player, Buster Posey. So now you tell me, when Buster Posey talks and when Craig Breslow talks, do they both sound like former players? Jimmy, would you ever compare those two, Buster Posey and Craig Breslow, and describe them as former players?
No, not at all.
Okay, Breslow sounds much more like your typical analytical, modern day baseball executive. Posey is a kind of guy who, as someone would say, once said to me, still has dirt in his spikes. Craig Breslow, again, as someone told me, doesn't have dirt in his spikes. Not anymore. He's kind of grown out of that. And honestly, I'm not sure he ever had dirt in his spikes.
I agree. Him and Jed Lowry were always the smartest person in the room.
So here's what I'm getting at. It feels to me like the Giants have rebelled and gone against the grain with what the rest of baseball is now adopting, embracing in this analytics age. The Giants have gone in the other direction. And I am fascinated. I said this to someone earlier in the year, that I read a story in the Wall Street Journal about what the Giants were doing in their minor leagues. I'll see if I can find it. It was, again, a story in the Wall Street Journal about how the Giants were now conditioning their minor league pitchers to go deeper into games. They're tired of the max velocity, air it out, arm injuries waiting to happen approach, and using 6 pitchers in a game. They want their starters to go deeper. They're stretching them out. Now, again, this was a story that was written a couple of months ago. So I want to talk to someone about it. Susan Slusser, who covers the Giants and has covered Major League Baseball for many years, will join us next. We'll get to your calls. Plenty to talk about still in the aftermath and fallout of the Rafael Devers trade right here on the Baseball Hour. for you as soon as it's complete. In the interim, I told you, one of the things that I'm interested about in this trade and this saga with Rafael Devers is what inspired the Giants to do it. And more importantly, the contrast between the Giants and the Red Sox. So I just said to you a second ago, Buster Posey, former player, beloved in San Francisco for obvious reasons, won 3 World Series, won a Rookie of the Year, the MVP, just an absolute hero in San Francisco, rightfully so, is now their chief baseball executive, replacing a guy who is your cookie-cutter, modern-day nerd. And that's not the only thing San Francisco has done to sort of push back against the trends in Major League Baseball. So I'm sort of fascinated in the way the Giants are doing business because it flies in the face now of everything that most other teams are doing. So to help us out, Susan Slusser of the San Francisco Chronicle is joining us via the Volkswagen Dealers Expert Hotline. She used to cover the Oakland A's, and in the interest of disclosure, I'll tell everybody, I knew Susan when we were both on the American League circuit. We used to run into each other constantly in postseason games, et cetera, et cetera. So, Susan, you tell me, are the Giants bucking the trend here? Is that what the whole idea is with Buster Posey and their operation?
Well, I mean, bucking the trend maybe, but also, he was sitting right there in their ownership group. He's a franchise icon, and he was starting to become a little bit more and more involved, and they didn't make the playoffs 3 years in a row. It really kind of is as simple as that. I actually talked to Farhan Zaidi the other day, and he very much understands the reason for the move last year. He went like, yeah, they had Buster there, and we hadn't made the playoffs for 3 years. So I don't think it was necessarily going against the grain. I think it was Buster was interested. If Buster had wanted to be the manager, he would probably be the manager.
Okay, I got you. So is he someone who is deep into analytics?
He certainly understands them. He's surrounded himself with people who, they've still got a very active analytics department. They've got a lot of people up top who are certainly well-versed in analytics. While he was a catcher, so he very much understands anything to do with the pitching side and the hitting side. Catchers are broadcasters and managers for a reason because they sort of see everything. I think this actually applies pretty well to a front office too, because he knows what's going on in every area, and I'm going to say including analytics, but he really was, this does not come as a surprise to anyone, he was such a leader as a player, very no nonsense, very let's get the job done. And he's taken that into his top baseball executive role, except for the one thing that's kind of surprising all of us is he actually does seem like he's having fun with it. He's really taken to it. It seems like he enjoys it. It's seemingly more than he did when he was a player. He was very intense, very focused as a player. He's joking. He looks somehow younger. He's very accessible to the media, and he even seems to enjoy that part of it, which is crazy. So maybe he was born for this job.
What led them to do this deal?
Well, they needed a bat. They've needed kind of any kind of bat, but especially a left-handed bat for a long time. They've struggled to attract hitters in free agency. Matt Chapman aside, obviously his glove is kind of as valuable, if not more, than the bat. They had the deal with Carlos Correa in place, and then he failed, so that's a little bit of an asterisk there. But obviously they missed out on some of the biggies. They were even being right there with the money. So this gets them the big left-handed bat for a long time, and the sort of thing they might not be able to do in free agency. We knew going into the offseason that they would be they'd have a good pitching staff. The bullpen would be good. The defense would be decent. But we all knew that they would be kind of short in the offensive department, especially when you look at the top two projected teams in the NL West, of course, the Dodgers and then the Padres. The Giants just didn't have that kind of firepower. This maybe doesn't quite put them in on equal footing, but it certainly makes the lineup, just huge amounts better, and probably makes everyone else in the lineup a little bit better, too.
Right, totally closes the gap. And so that part I get. Were you surprised about the money, Susan? Because I think a lot of people saw this and go, wow, the Giants are taking on the whole contract. So were you surprised by that?
Well, it was initially, but then when you look at it, putting Jordan Hicks in that deal, and then you take into account the deferral, it winds up not being much more than maybe about $6 million this year and the next couple of years through the end of Hicks's. And by then, you've lost other guys with big contracts, blah, blah. So right now, in the short term, it's not prohibitive. You can always do something with somebody later. You could trade them. You could do whatever. I'm certainly not suggesting that's their plan, but if they had to. But this is a franchise that has plenty of money. They are now the only team in the Bay Area, which is the highest income market in baseball. And they're the only team. Every other team is shared among the big cities and the big high-income areas. So the Giants have plenty of money. They might not have that TV deal or the Japan money that the Dodgers have, but they're doing fine. Okay, so I got you. In other words, the departure of the A's almost really gives them the market exclusively. There's no competition. Well, they kind of had the market already, really, but and they've always had plenty of resources. If they as you mentioned, I covered the A's for a million years. If and when the Giants ever cry poor, I will laugh so hard because they're not, and they haven't been. But they now have this entire very wealthy market all to themselves. Okay, and so again, we're speaking with Susan Slusser, covers the Giants for the San Francisco Chronicle. And Susan, I said, I know we haven't talked a ton about the trade because I think, honestly, it's been largely exhausted. But I have two more questions for you. The first of which, is there anything about the players the Red Sox are getting back that we don't know about that should surprise people? In other words, the group of players they got back in this deal feels unspectacular, but you tell me, is there someone in there that is some sort of hidden gem? Well, I mean, here in San Francisco, we've been hearing about Kyle Harrison since he was drafted. He's local. He's from Danville in the East Bay. He's left-handed. He's a pretty special talent. And the feeling is around the Giants, especially Andrew Bailey, having been the Giants pitching coach. Obviously, I know Andrew from his A's days, is that he's a guy who potentially could really get the best out of him. I'm not saying that the Giants worked, but he could be a little bit of a fresh start guy. There just wasn't a spot for him in this current rotation. He was very much in their future plans. I mean, he was their top pitching prospect for a number of years, and a great and very sharp, very accountable kind of guy who's been mentored very, very much so by Logan Webb. You can't really get a better mentor than that. Jordan Hicks also could be a bounce-back kind of guy. Again, with Andrew Bailey, if he wants to go back to starting, maybe they can figure out how to get him through a season healthy. At the start of last season, the first 6 weeks, he looked amazing. He looked like a potential all-star, and then he kind of ran out of steam. The one that might really come back to bite the Giants is James Tibbs. I think he's going to be a good big league hitter. Defensive position maybe a little up in the air. Defense is a little bit more of a question, but I think he's going to hit the big leagues, and that one might hurt the Giants. I don't know anything about Jose Bayo. Okay, here's the last thing I want to ask you, and this is a little off the grid, but bear with me. Prior to the season, Susan, I was reading a story in the Wall Street Journal just about all the changes in Major League Baseball and how max velocity is the rage. Pitchers are having more arm injuries than ever before, and teams yet continue to insist max effort, max velocity. And yet there is one franchise, the story said, that is trying to buck the trend, and I suppose that's where I got the phrase earlier, that is really trying to do things differently in the minor leagues, and that was the Giants, and that they are encouraging their pitchers now to encouraging their organizations and player development operation, their affiliates, I should say, not organizations, but their affiliates to train pitchers to go deeper into games, higher pitch counts. In other words, for the marathon that is a major league start, not just the sprint that starting has become. They want to make starting pitching an important part of the job again, and they wanted to make starting pitchers, I should say, centerpieces in the operation. So what can you tell me about that? Because I was thrilled to hear this, and I think that inevitably somebody was going to push back and go back to the way things used to be done. Well, I didn't read that particular story. I wrote about this during spring training. I think that's slightly mischaracterizing it. Under the previous front office, they were very careful, very, very careful with their minor league starters. They were not pitching more than like 4 or 5 innings. They were coming up unprepared to go deep into games and then getting asked to go deep into games. Harrison was one who I think really did not benefit from the way they were doing things, but sort of overly careful. And, they've got the Mondays off now, too. There were guys who were pitching once a week and getting in 4 innings. Buster came in, and that's one of the first things he said was, we are going to get back to having our minor leaguers be ready to pitch, the way we expect them to pitch when they get to the big leagues. We want guys going deeper into games. I think I'm not sure it's tied much at all to, max effort or anything like that. I think it's really just making sure that they have starters that can get deep into games because, obviously there's a ripple effect on the bullpens, and that's not great either. So that's the plan. We'll see how it pans out. But we have noticed the workloads at AAA, especially going up.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, Susan, I'll take it. Whatever it is, I'll take it. Because the idea that starting pitchers go 4 innings, I'm going to keep watching it, and I want to see what, how some of this stuff goes. Because I think the way they handle starting pitchers now in Major League Baseball, really not starters, all of them, I think is ridiculous. I think it's ruined the game. But look, it's been a long time, so I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and thanks for coming on.
Tony, anytime. You remain one of my favorites.
Well, thanks a lot. Okay, so again, Susan Slusser, San Francisco Chronicle, via the Volkswagen Dealers Expert Hotline. Red Sox are final in Seattle. I see a number of you lined up. When we come back, we'll get to your calls, and I will tell you why this was a sneaky important game for the Red Sox today in Seattle, and to their credit, they delivered. We'll get to that when we come back in the Baseball Hour.
Sports Hub headline.
Durant backing up, and lunges, and he dropped the ball into second base of Rosarena. He will stop there. Durant fighting the sun all the way to the base of the fence.
Yeah, you could see him fighting it as he was going back on this. You could tell the ball was in the sun for a majority of the way. This one's hit straight up in the sky. As he's going back, you'll kind of watch him kind of stumble and put his hand up a couple times, try to block it with the glove. And then as that ball comes out of the sun, you're kind of aiming for it with your glove. He runs into the wall, can't come down with it.
And I suppose because of the sun, they're going to rule that a double.
So this goes up my ass. The sun, again, look, I'm in the studio here while the game's going on. Okay, so I can't hear every detail. I saw Jaron Durant drop a fly ball, and I said, well, here we go again. The Red Sox are going to revert and go right back to who they were before this last little stretch where they started winning some games. They were up 1-0 at the time. Durant botches a ball in the outfield. Crochet throws a wild pitch after the runner advanced to third base. Now it's a 1-1 game, and here you go. So now I'm ready to get on Crochet for blowing another lead and throwing a wild pitch that gets a runner home. I'm ready to get on Duran. And you tell me, Jimmy Stewart, does that make me an a-hole if he lost the ball in the sun or had to fight the ball in the sun?
No.
Catch the ball. Catch the ball. And I told a number of you this already. It's a Jaron Duran problem. Those of you who think he's a good outfielder, God, you're so wrong. You have no idea. He's not that good.
He's misplayed about 8 balls this year, and nobody gets on his case, and they all think he's a Gold Glover. He's not.
He's got a bunch of drops out there already that are errors, actual errors. This was called a double because of the fallacy that the sun was involved in.
Wait, they called that a double?
They did. They scored it a double.
That's a joke.
Oh, it drives me bananas. So, now that said, fine, whatever. Trevor Story ended up hitting a 2-run home run to give him a 3-1 lead. The Red Sox nailed it down from there. And that's right, Trevor Story hit a home run on a fastball that was 95 miles an hour. It was a 2-seamer from Luis Castillo. He blasted it over the wall in left center field.
Yeah, but this isn't the Luis Castillo who was the ace for the Reds 3 years ago.
He's not the same guy. But nonetheless, the pitch was 95, which to me is sort of a kind of a threshold. So I'll give Story credit for that. And I'm just telling you, I didn't love the way that thing happened early in the game. It sort of got me, especially after they lost 8-0 last night. But this brings me to the larger point. It was a good win. And I said this during the game. Sneaky important game. You're playing the Mariners. You just got your asses kicked last night, 8-0. I think the Red Sox had 3 hits in the game after having a handful the night before. So they haven't hit the whole series. Castillo's on the mound, maybe their worst starter against your best in Crochet. Travel day, rubber game of the series, so whoever wins the game wins the series. Kind of a big spot, as much as you can have one in the regular season. And they delivered. And I will tell you, I don't know that I've seen a team turn the season around stylistically. The Red Sox, and I shouldn't say turn it around because I'm not ready to go all the way there yet, but have a streak like this where they've completely changed identities in the last week and a half. So the Red Sox have now won, 9 out of 11 or something like that? 7 out of 8, 9 out of 11. And during that stretch, really haven't hit for the large majority of it. In fact, in this series, correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, I don't have the numbers in front of me.
They might have 12 hits total.
Well, not only that, I think they got outscored in the series, right? They had 5 runs in the series and won 2 of the games.
Yeah.
The Mariners scored 9. So they get outscored in the series, which is going to be one of the side effects of not having Rafael Devers. The lineup is thinner. You're not as good. But Roman Anthony hit one out the first night. Marcelo Meyer hit one out today. Story hit another one. You won the game 3-1. And they're winning, all of a sudden winning all these games that are low scoring. Mostly with good pitching. Crochet today, followed by Whitlock in the 7th, Aroldis Chapman in the 8th, Weissert in the 9th. And the Red Sox win the game. And can I tell you right now, you got to do better than Weissert in the ninth. Weissert's not going to cut it. That's not going to work. Not long term. You want to use him in the sixth inning of a game? Fine. They got to get something better to go with Whitlock and Chapman at the end of the game. Maybe this is part of the reason the San Francisco deal happened. Maybe they can get something out of those guys or something at the deadline if they're in this thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy Stewart, I think today's win puts them back into possession of the wild card spot.
That sounds right.
So they fell out of it because they had lost to the Mariners. This is another thing you should keep in mind, that Seattle is a team that they are competing with for that playoff spot, that third wild card spot in the American League. So beating them is not insignificant. And you can tell me that it's too early to look at the scoreboard or play that sort of game. I'm telling you that it's never too early. If you end up getting in by one game over the Mariners, this was it. So I'll take any win against a competitive team that they can get. So overall, look, again, I give them credit. They've had a nice little stretch here. Look at the games that the Red Sox are winning now compared to the ones that they were winning before. They lost 17 or 18 games by one run. Now, all of a sudden, in the last, call it 10 days, 8 days, they have won by scores of 3-1, 4-3, 2-1 in extras, 4-3, 2-0, 2-0, 3-1. Now, all of a sudden, they are masters of winning the low-scoring game when early in the year it felt like they couldn't win any of them. So the pitching is better. I don't know about the defense.
It's not better.
Because Jarren Duran on that play today, he's just not a reassuring guy out there. I'm sorry, never has been. So
Roman Anthony misplayed one last night.
He did. He took a bad angle on a ball that went off the wall. And again, it didn't really hurt them because Rafael backed him up and threw the ball in the infield. It was not an error. But I would just keep an eye on those young guys. Meanwhile, Christian Campbell continues to struggle. Wilyer Abreu could be coming off the injured list in the next couple of days, which is going to force a roster move. And could it be that Campbell goes back to AAA?
No, they'll send Eaton down, the extra outfielder.
Oh, so right, Eaton's on the roster now too. So, but I do wonder, what becomes of Christian Campbell, who's now down to 223. We'll take a couple of your calls, but again, good win for the Red Sox today in Seattle to get 2 out of 3 against the Mariners. Dan in Maine on the trade. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, I get the trade was a salary dump, and you see this a lot. Like the Marlins, for example, traded Stanton and didn't eat any of them, or the Yankees ate all the money. But the Marlins don't have the resources to eat any of the money. And wouldn't it behoove a team like the Red Sox to eat some of that money in a deal in order to get better prospects in return? And just hear me out on this. Let's say they're willing to cover
before you go on, let me just put you on hold, because when you ask me too many questions at once, I can't answer them. My wife knows this. She can only give me one thing to do at a time, because otherwise I forget to do the rest of them. So would it behoove them to take on money? Yes, it would. They didn't. So you're not wrong. And thank you for saying that. When you bring up the Marlins and the Giancarlo Stanton deal, you're not wrong. The Yankees took on all that money. But in this scenario, you were the Marlins. It is inexcusable for the Red Sox to me to operate like the Marlins. But keep going. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just saying it would be almost a capital investment. If they get better prospects, they would have young, controllable talent for the future. So even though they're eating let's say they eat $50 to $100 million, they could conceivably win the deal by having cost-controllable talent down the road that they can control, like these Myers and Anthony's and what have you. I just feel like it's very short-term thinking. They
I agree.
Yeah, and they got nothing with Betts with Price.
No, Dan, you made the point. They did this same sort of thing, although they did eat a little of Price's money in that situation. But because Betts was in the final year, they also probably got a little bit less from the Dodgers. Now, I do remember people at the time thinking Verdugo was better than he was. We've all learned that. And I would tell you that the Dodgers snookered the Red Sox on that one. The Red Sox got their asses kicked on that trade. They got their asses kicked on the Dodgers deal. On this one, I'm happy to wait and see. But based on the preliminary reviews, it doesn't sound like they get any type of blue chip talent back. Your point's a good one. What you are talking about ultimately ultimately is effectively buying talent from the other organization by eating money on the contract. If you eat that money, it's like giving the Giants money so that they don't have to pay the entirety of the Devers deal. And in exchange for you eating that money, you get better players back. So you're buying the prospects. Yes, they should have done that. 100%. But they want to get under that luxury tax, especially in a year where they don't make the playoffs. That's my guess. You know, I'm hearing different things out of Fenway now in terms of how they're handling the money over there. And that one of the priorities really has to do with, they're not as concerned with the luxury tax, but I find that hard to believe. It's becoming more about cash in and cash out.
They're 7 under the tax now after the Devers trade, Tony.
So, Jimmy, I want to double check that because I've heard different things. That, they also, the guy who came from the Giants, Hicks, is on a $44 million deal, so some of his money got added. I don't know if that puts them over the tax or not. I personally haven't done the math, but they're close either way, one way or the other. So they can still get under if they're not under, and let's see how they do it the rest of the year.
I trust Shaughnessy in him saying that they're 19th in spending.
So, and that is that's on the active roster.
Exactly, 19th, Maz.
I know, but it doesn't include Bregman, who's on the injured list, and they're paying Bregman. So, to me, it's always about what the 40-man roster is. It's not an active payroll. It's a luxury tax payroll. That was always the number that I was interested in, but maybe it's not the way they're doing it now anymore. And I mean the Red Sox. John in the car. John, what do you got?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. As far as this goes, the Red Sox don't really want to win championships anymore.
I agree.
I think that they don't read the room. They don't recognize that the fans are fed up with this, and we just want a decent product on the field. Why should we go to games? Why should we be paying for tickets or memorabilia, any of it?
So, John,
I'm sick of this attitude.
So, John, there's one thing I disagree with you on. They know you're upset about it. They don't care. So, and I've got a couple of calls about this today that people have said, well, they don't, they're unaware that we're unhappy. You're like, no. They understand you're unhappy. They don't care. Because you know what? When you're not buying the tickets to Fenway, if you're not buying them, and again, sometimes I chuckle when people say, well, I'm not going to the games anymore, because I think the people that love the sport are still going to go. And some of you just like to sit out at the ballpark on a nice night and have a couple of beers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I remember, again, I used to laugh at a friend of mine whenever there was a work stoppage and say, I'm not watching baseball anymore. A week after they returned to play, he was back. Every time. So now, again, this is a little different. I understand. But I think if you're hooked on it, you're hooked on it. And if you're not going to buy the tickets, guess who is? The people who support the visiting team, because they have taken over Fenway Park routinely now in the last few years. Happens all the time. Because people say, oh, let's go to Fenway. Tickets are cheaper now. The Red Sox aren't that good anymore. And their own fans aren't buying the tickets. So they still sell the tickets. TV ratings have gone down. So that has hurt the Red Sox. Maybe that's part of the reason the payroll has gone down. But either way, I still think the Red Sox are cleaning up. They can put a better team on the field. But I'm just telling you, the idea that, you say they're not even aware that we're upset. Oh, no, they're aware. They don't care. Drew's in Boston. Drew, go ahead.
Hey, Tony, I think the Red Sox missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime because they're going to get rid of Devers. Okay, fine. If they took a big market approach, paid his entire salary, maybe married it up with like a Duran and a Bayo or a Dobbins and sent them to Pittsburgh, I don't think they could turn that down for a player like Paul Skeens. And that's how you spend $300 million to win the next 5 divisions and probably a couple World Series.
So, Drew, listen, the Paul Skeens thing, people got to drop this. The Pirates aren't going to take a 29-year-old fat DH for Paul Skeens. And I understand what you're saying about the money. I appreciate the thought. A team like the Pirates is never going to be able to pay anybody. And I know you said they'll just eat all the money on Devers. You know what they want? They want young players with upside. It's never going to change in Pittsburgh as long as they're operating it the way they operate it. They're just going to keep sucking with young players. The only way they're going to get good is to try to draft and develop. So to throw in a Durant, who's 28, 29, with a Devers, who's 29, and it's not going to make them. It's not going to make them all that much more appealing to their fan base. They're not good enough. You're not going to get Skeens. The only way you're going to do that is to give up Marcelo Meyer or Roman Anthony. That's how you're going to get Skeens. Rafael Devers isn't going to get it done. Sorry to snap at you. That the whole Paul Skeens thing is just driving me bananas. It drives me nuts. Everybody wants to conjure up some sort of crazy scenario in which you can get the one guy in baseball that everyone wants, and that if the Pirates put him up for auction, the price is going to be astronomical in terms of prospects. Because it should be. He's that good. You want him? Offer Meyer and Anthony. You might get him. But you're not going to do that. Kevin and Jory will have your headlines here at the top of the hour. Joe Murray's got you for the rest of the night. We'll catch you tomorrow on the Baseball Hour.
This is